go on a journey. Sit back, buckle up, enjoy the ride with Crystal Petrie. Consulting, so inspiring, pushing you to your dream.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of 60 Minutes With. I'm your host, Crystal Petrie. Today, we're going to learn about the law, specifically justice of the peace. Who are they? What do they do besides wear the black robe and bang the gavel? You'll learn about all of that and more on this episode of the podcast. And here to educate us on all things justice of the peace, we have Judge Naomi Doyle. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited about this, really, because I'm just going to be honest, I don't know a lot about what a justice of the peace does. Mm-hmm. So I'm very excited for you to educate me as well as my viewers on exactly what it is, at least what you can tell us, exactly what it is that you do.
Okay.
So thank you so much. So my first question is, okay, is a judge and a justice of the peace the same thing? Because people use those terms interchangeably. Mm-hmm. So are they the same thing?
They are the same thing.
Okay.
A justice of the peace is a judge of the justice courts.
Okay.
So we are a judge, and justice of the peace goes back when Texas was a republic and we were just getting established, and the justice of the peace was your lawmaker, your decision maker, mm-hmm. that kind of judge. And so that's kind of where it comes from. But they are a judge of the people, representing people who can come into the court and they can represent themselves. So you're kind of like your common sense judge is kind of how it all started back at the very beginning of the conception of justice of the peace in Texas.
Okay, so is it still considered, or is it still the common sense judge in today's time?
So in many ways it is, because the kind of cases that we hear. So when people think about Judge Judy and the People's Court, you hear people arguing amongst each other about minor things a lot of times, mm-hmm. right? And so we have to be the decision maker in those things. So a lot of times, some things it can come down to just being common sense, right? But it gets a little bit more complex, just how things grow. Mm-hmm. It's gotten a little bit more complex. And so it just ranges from very small disputes where it's just a matter of, okay, you guys, like, kind of like Solomon, like, we're not going to split the baby, we're going to make a common sense, decision here, but then it can get more complex, so it just depends.
Okay, can you explain the Solomon statement that you made? Mm-hmm. I want to make sure that my viewers understand what that means.
Right, so Solomon, and I'll just preface it by saying I'm a preacher's kid, so that's very true to me. But basically, he was a wise man in the Bible, and God gave him a lot of wisdom. And so two women came arguing about whose baby it was, and one of the women wanted to, I want my half of the baby. Mm-hmm. And so he was able to make a common sense decision and say, well, if you want to separate the baby, then you really shouldn't have the baby, right? And so using that kind of sense and wisdom kind of is the approach that a lot of us should take when we come to the bench, right? And so that's what I pray for, is wisdom like Solomon, when I'm able to make decisions that just solely come down to what is the best interest of the people, as opposed to things that are just strictly a matter of law.
Oh, okay. What is the benefit to the community for having a justice of the peace?
So the great thing about it, and I like to always say this, is that we're the people's court, which means that a lot of people will never go up to a district court, right? You're not going to have some complex civil case that's, hundreds of millions of dollars or whatever, or you might not have criminal matters that get you in those courts. But you may get a traffic ticket. You may, something very small. You might want to sue your neighbor over, like, the fence that blew down, and no one can decide who's going to pay. Okay. And so what you have is a person who's in the community just like you, who's able to make decisions on matters that may seem trivial, but you need a decision maker to come in and weigh in and give you that resolution.
So a non-biased person that's not affiliated with whatever the situation is.
Correct. Non-biased, impartial, able to come in. And again, like I said, since so many things are common sense and small claims, you just want someone who's able to see the facts and hear the issues and then make the best decision at that time.
You are the Justice of the Peace, Precinct 1, Place 1 in Jefferson County, Texas. What do those numbers mean? Precinct 1, Place 1.
Right. So our precinct, Precinct 1, which is the Justice of the Peace Precinct, Precinct 1, is the largest precinct, JP precinct in our county. And so because because it's so large, it's all of North and West Beaumont, and then we go all the way out to Bevel Oaks. We go all the way out to Tram Road, and we go almost up to China, to that area, and the Diamond D Ransom areas over there. So it's a very, very large precinct. And because it's so large, it's split into two places, Place 1 and Place 2. And so myself, I preside over Place 1, and then Judge Collins presides over Place 2, but we all share the same precinct. So we're all in the same precinct. We just divvy up the duties because it's so much that the precinct does and encompasses. And what that also means is most JPs are elected in governor's years, so like 2022. However, Precinct 1, any Precinct 1, Place 1 is going to be elected in the president's year. So
why is that?
Because you don't want to have to replace out of one precinct. They don't want a whole upheaval of like brand new people, right? And so that's kind of the offshoot, and it has its advantages and disadvantages. But Place 2s are always going to be alongside with the governor's ballot, and then ours is with the presidential ballot.
So you are currently running for re-election, correct?
Correct.
So tell me a little bit about your re-election.
Yeah. So
your campaign, I mean.
Yeah, so as far as my campaign goes, I'm really big on being able to talk about the things that we have done. And a lot of the plans that I ran on back in 2020, the reason I was able to fulfill my campaign promises was because I studied the office and I realized what we can do and what the scope of things that have been done and things we can do better, and then things that are outside of my purview, but maybe I can create collaborative relationships with. And so that's what I've done in my tenure, and I want to continue to do so. And so that really looks like us continuing to build out our programs with our youth, which is something I'm really, really a big advocate for. And we work very closely with a lot of our at-risk youth and even some of our youth that are just interested in the law. And so kind of focusing on those things and focusing on how we've been presiding over the highest producing civil justice court. So that's another thing. My particular office, we have the most civil of all JPs in our county. And so, like I said, there's a lot of common sense approach, but then it gets more complex because I have some very complicated legal matters that take place in my court as well. And so presiding over that and just kind of really talking about some of the great things and the progress that we've done since being in office and how we want to continue to do so, and the relationships that we've established with our community, and being very present and visible has been something that's been very crucial to me, because if I'm an elected official and I'm for the people, then I should be amongst my people. And so, and that's all people. And so that's what my re-election is really based off of, is how we've been present, fair, and accessible to all people. And so that's what we will continue to do, and that's the premise of what we're running on again.
And when is the actual election? I know it's in 2024, which is the next presidential election. What date is that election?
March 5th. So I don't have an opponent in the November election. I just have an opponent in the primary election. So once the primary election is out of the way, then I'll be reseated again in Jesus' name, and then we'll go from there. So that's March 5th.
And how long have you been judge?
So I was elected in 2020. I took office December 1st, 2020. So we are in our third year of our first term, and so
Congratulations!
Yes,
it's like your anniversary.
Yeah, it is. It has been very, very interesting. A growing process. Just being able to see the things that, like I said, the promises you made, and then fulfilling those, and then building on it. So that has been something that has been very, very fulfilling for me.
Why is that so important? I see that you mentioned it twice, the promises that you made during your initial campaign that you have been able to fulfill. Because as we know, I know, my audience knows, normally when candidates, political candidates, they'll make the promises, they don't fulfill them, and then they just keep making the same promises and not fulfilling them. So why has that been so important to you, that you made these promises and you fulfill them?
Because I think it goes into how much you care about the office, the level of integrity that you choose to bring to the office, understanding what you can and can't do, right? And some things are a matter of innovation, right? Some things I came in and I was able to be innovative and create new things, but some things were just a matter of, here are some inefficiencies that we can build on, and here's how we can do it. And so I remember when I first ran, I had like a 90-day 3-point 90-day promise that I made to the constituents, and I was able to fulfill it within 85 days. But that was because I had assessed the office already and was able to say, these are some things that you as citizens should be receiving from us, and here are the things that we can do to achieve them. And I will achieve them. And so for me, it's just a matter of how much care do you take into the office. And if you're able to really get in and understand the office, not just say, well, I want to stop crime. Well, that's great, and we all do, but what role do we play in that, and how can we do that, And so to me, I just believe that people are owed truth, and so that's something that's big for me.
Excellent. So if someone wants to be a judge, wants to be a justice of the peace, what is the educational pathway to that?
So I love this question, because there's only 2 judges in the state of Texas that you can be without a law degree. Okay. And that is a justice of the peace, and that is a county judge. Okay. So those are the 2. You don't have to have a law degree. And with that being said, all you have to do is be 18 years old, registered in the precinct in which you're going to run, and have been a resident of it for, I think, about 6 months or 18 months or something of that effect.
Really?
But that's it. That's all it takes. That's all it takes.
Oh my goodness. My next question on here literally is, do you have to have a major in criminal justice? But you do not. So you can have a major.
You don't have to have a major at all. Exactly. You can just be a high school graduate. Yes.
What?
Yes.
People don't know that.
No, they don't. And I think, it goes back to the original creation of Justice of the Peace and county judges, is because we're supposed to be think about it, Texas was very rural. And so when I go to conferences and I see other Justice of the Peace, a lot of them preside over rural areas, right? And so they may not see levels of civil that I see, and then some urban areas see the same civil that I see, even more, more diverse. But it's just very different. And that was the creation. The creation was, we need like regular people to come in. We don't need. Yes. The thought was, we don't need lawyers coming in and telling us this and that at the very beginning,
yes.
Right? And as it has evolved, we see that there is a little bit more complex, but that still reigns true. And so that was the whole point of it.
You know what? I actually agree with that. I feel like normally I wouldn't, but just like hearing it, I agree with that. Like we do need and not to say that people who, have degrees are not normal people. That's not the case. But just like average people coming in to help us with our issues.
Right.
Yeah. I love it. Oh my goodness. Okay, so can you have a felony and still be a judge?
I do not believe that is one of the things that would allow you to be a judge. I think that's one of those things. I would have to look specifically in the qualifications, but I don't think having a felony is something that typically qualifies you for many public offices. And
okay.
I'm pretty sure JP is one of them.
Can you have like anything on your record, or does your record have to be absolutely spotless?
No, it doesn't have to be spotless, but we're getting into some like legalities, because there's different ways about what it means to have stuff on your record and like where that shows up. Because even in my court, you can have things expunged in different levels. So it just depends. I would just say that if you are interested in public office, in JPs or any other office, that you will want to try to make sure that you take care of whatever legal matters you have, and try to avoid things that are final convictions. Final convictions are the things that typically cause flags when it's time to run for things.
Okay. Were you scared to become Justice of the Peace or to run for that office? Because you really are putting yourself out there to do that.
So that's such an interesting question, because I wrestled with deciding to run for a while. I started off as an elections manager under an elected official. And I think when I first got there, way back in 2013, when I got to Miss Carolyn Guidry's office, our county clerk at the time, I believed, I was like, yeah, I'm going to run for office, you know, da, da, da. But then I just got really into the job, and I was like, I want to do this job amazingly. And so I really got focused on that, and I just fell in love with that part of it. And then that went away. And then the bug came back, and I was like, yeah, I think I want to run. But I didn't want to run for county clerk anymore. I was like, I don't know, I want to do something else. And I had the itch, and I would like just kind of like, no, it's not time, it's not time, it's not time. And then finally, I kept having to scratch that itch, and I was like, but there's something there, something holding me back. I'm not sure what it is. And I went through all these different things, you know, what offices I'm interested in, what I qualify for. And when I found the JP office, I said, this is perfect. Like, I feel like I could really bring something here. So what's stopping me now? This is 2018. So what's stopping me in 2018? And I was like, oh, it's just not time. And then, I don't know if you remember, but in 2018 in Harris County, there was a whole slate of African-American female judges that won.
Yes, I remember that.
County Judge Lena Hidalgo won.
Yes.
And I remember seeing them and seeing her and asking myself, so what's stopping me? And so I had to sit with that question, and the answer was fear. That was the only thing that was stopping me. And so I had to deal with that, because that should never be a reason why you don't run for something. If you are qualified and you have everything else, and you've done your time and you've given to your community, you have a heart that's pure, and you think you can bring something to it, if fear is the only thing stopping you, that is not a good enough reason. And so that was the realization I had to come to with myself. So battling and getting over the fear of, you know, okay, is it time for me to put myself out there and my family and all that? And so took a lot of prayer and consultation with my family and a lot of mentorship from my boss. And I was able to get past that. It didn't mean that I wasn't met with moments of fear throughout the process, but I just remember when I went to file and writing my check, I came home and like I was in my bathroom and I was just praising God. I was so excited. It was like such a relief, because I felt like God was waiting on me to be like, when are you going to get past that? Because I got something for you.
Yes.
So, yeah.
And you know what, that testimony reminds me of a poem, and I don't know if you're familiar with it, called Our Deepest Fear by Marianne Williamson. Mm-hmm. Okay, if you haven't looked at this poem, please Google it. It's amazing. But the poem talks about exactly what you said, that our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Mm-hmm. Our deepest fear is that we are successful beyond measure, and successful beyond what we could possibly think or hope.
Yeah.
And, you know, I was thinking about that as you were talking about, you know, that the fear was the only thing that holds you back. And she talks about how fear holds us back from being talented, fabulous, gorgeous. That's the only thing that holds people back. Yeah. So you got past the fear, you got past yourself, basically. What was the thing that said, I want to be a judge and I can do this job? What was that?
So again, that went back to studying the offices, right, and understanding what I was qualified for, and looking at different things of that nature, because I did go through several offices to look through, well, what am I qualified for? And so when I landed on the Justice of the Peace, I thought, okay, I'm qualified for this. This seems like something I'm interested in. Let me see what's going on in our county and how it's being done in our county. Okay, let me see what's going on in other states. So I looked at other states and their equivalents to Justice of the Peace. And then I looked at what's happening across our state. And then I saw in our state what our JPs were doing in some counties. I just was amazed, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I feel like I have the drive and the inventiveness, if you will, to bring that here. And so I said, yeah. I can do that. I can do that. And then I can do it. And if I have to do it and be different or alone in doing so, I know I'm not alone because other people have done it. And so why don't we spearhead and bring that to our county? And I remember I will never forget, one time I asked a question on Facebook about something about planning a class reunion, right? I was trying to get my like classmates together to plan it, and one of my previous mentors commented under the post, and she said, "If you have to ask, that means that you need to do it." And so I will never, and that was just about a class reunion,
Yes.
okay? But I feel like that's something I take with me to this day. If there's something that has to be done, and no one else is doing it, are you going to sit around and complain, or are you going to do it? You know, and so that was kind of the I guess how I took it personally for myself, and I was like, well, I'm going to do it then.
So real quick, did you end up planning the class reunion?
Yes, well, I didn't plan it by myself. No. I did not want to be the lead on that, but I did get the conversation going, and we got together and we did plan our class reunion. So it did all work out, but somebody did have to get the juices going and start the conversation. And so I'm all about that. I can play all the way in the back if need be, but if we can get it going, then that's what it's about. Yeah.
So I would be remiss, and there's no way that I'm going to sit down with you and not say that you are the very first African American judge in Jefferson County, Texas. African American female in Jefferson County, Texas. Yes. Which for me, being an African American female just makes me super excited. But how does that make you feel?
Well, it feels amazing. And I wanna say this because I'm the first one elected as in Jefferson County, but we do have like city municipal judges as well. Right. But
we're not taking away from.
But we're not taking away, and so it was an amazing feat for me. I thought that was. I didn't even to be honest with you, I didn't even know when I decided to run. Didn't even realize it. I think until. I went into my runoff, and that's when I was like, oh my gosh, I started doing some research, and I was like, wow, are we? And I'm thinking to myself, it's 2020. Why? Like, why would I be the first? Like, you know? But yeah, so I thought it was great, but I also was like, we're a little bit behind, aren't we?
Yeah, just a little bit. Now, President Obama, when he was first elected as president, first African-American president, one of the things that he would always say is being the first is amazing, but it's also the hardest because you are the first. Have you found that to be true with you?
I can't even say being the first Black female has been difficult. I would say being a female in this profession has been difficult. And I'm not the first female, right? There's been other females to be JP in our county. But like I said, this office goes back very, very far. And so when you go to conferences and the room is predominantly white males, you know, and so that is interesting. And so that probably has been a little bit more of a challenge is with your male counterparts and how you show up. I think that has been more so one of the dynamics that has been interesting to navigate. Not so much the race thing, but definitely as a female in this profession.
You know what? You are saying like amazing stuff. This interview has been so amazing. And you say a lot of stuff that like makes me think of other things. So Shirley Chisholm, first African American elected for Congress, that's the exact same thing she said back in the 60s and 70s. That the hardest part about it wasn't that she was Black. The hardest part about it was that she was female. Yeah. I'm like, and we're in 2023, about to go into 2024, and we're still dealing with that same issue.
Oh yes.
It's just. It should be unheard of. Like, that should not be the case. But unfortunately, it still is. Which leads me to my next question. Why do you feel like it has taken so long for an African-American female to be elected as judge in Jefferson County, as Justice of the Peace in Jefferson County, Texas?
Well, I think that there has, specifically for the Justice of the Peace, I think that we've had some very long-seated JPs prior to me and who've done a great job. And I think that this is definitely one of those positions where you can come and stay forever. And so that we have to always talk about access to the opportunity, right? Well, if there's an incumbent who's doing well, then you really don't have much access to it because they're doing well. And so I think that that's one thing. But also, representation matters, and I didn't realize how big it was, but it does matter to see someone there before. When you see someone there, then it becomes real to you. It may not even be in your purview because you've never seen anyone who looks like you there, or even a conversation about that. So it's never in your purview. Your eyes are just blinded to it. And so that's kind of my hope, is that whoever comes next, you see that it's doable because she did it. So I know that I can do it, right? And to a little girl, to a young lady, to whomever, you can do it. And so I just think it was one of those things that I think JP, the office itself, is kind of not super stated, not a super celebrated position in our community, because we just kind of deal with what we deal with, and a lot of people know us from evictions, and people don't like to talk about evictions and deaths because we do a lot with that. And so it's not a super glamorous position, but I still think it's something, and if people understood how important it is, they would want to have access to it, because you have a real effect on people. And especially if you come in with a servant's heart, there's so many opportunities for you to touch and better your community through this office. So I just think it's one of those things that's not in your purview, because it's not the position itself is not a grandiose position. And then if you don't see it, sometimes you don't even think that you could be it.
Right.
You know?
Yes. So Justice of the Peace, they're elected every 4 years, along with the president, and there are no term limits, correct?
No.
Do you believe there should be term limits?
I don't know. You know, term limits is such a dicey subject. I mean, even from when I studied it in school, I think it's always good to have some new perspective in there, but there is something to say about institutional knowledge and memory. I don't foresee that, like, say if you put a 4-year term limit on something, I don't think that that's horrible. But again, we run into the times where you have people who are doing amazing in the position. And do you want to get rid of them when they're doing amazing things? And so I don't have a hard stance on term limits, to be honest with you, because when they're really great, you want them to stay. But when they're not great, but the people just keep electing them, then yeah, you want them gone. But it's really dicey, and so I think it really comes down to how well we can train our electorate, our people, to hold elected officials accountable. Now, once we get to that point, I don't think term limits even becomes a discussion, because if they're not doing the things that the community expects of them, legally, lawfully, and all those things, then they will vote them out. But we're not there yet. And so I understand the want for government to put the term limits in there, but I feel like there's a catch-22 there. So I think really if we can help our electorate understand, let's make our elected officials accountable to us, because that's who they are supposed to be adhering to, right? And that's who, you're our boss. You know, you are the ones who hold whether or not we're here for another 4, 8, 10, whatever years. You know, if we were to really empower them, then we wouldn't even have to have this conversation. And that's what I would like to get to, personally.
That's what I would like to get to, too. That was very well stated, yes. So, as the first African-American female justice of the peace in Jefferson County, Texas, do you feel like you have to carry the banner for the entire Black community and the entire female community?
You know what? Kinda. But it doesn't feel so heavy, though.
Really?
It doesn't. I remember when I first got into office, I was bogged down with what that felt like, what it felt like to be this focal point or whatever. And so I remember I was like, oh, I can't do this and I can't do that. And what I've learned is you have to be authentic, right? And you still have to be you. And again, that goes with who you are personally and who you pray to, who you're accountable to, who I'm accountable to, right? And so I feel like if I'm doing it the way God says do it, then I can be who I am. And who I am is not, I am not all black people. We are not a monolith. And so let me just stop there. Black people are not a monolith. We are very diverse and we're very different. And I celebrate all of us, right? And so I'm not going to look like all black people. But if I walk into a room and they're like, oh, that's how all black people are, well, that's okay, because I'm going to wear it with pride. And I'm going to show up as a professional. And I think you'll leave with a good impression about what it means to be a black professional and a black female professional. And, and I feel like I do that. And now I'm at a place where it's not so heavy, because I still feel like I can be authentic, and I understand that I'm not all of us, and that we're diverse. And so because I understand that, I don't mind if people look at me and say, well, that's how they all are. Well, if that's how you feel, I think I represented us well in this setting.
Do you think that, like, as you are living your everyday life, you have to think about, and you touched on it a little bit, got to kind of think about what you're going to say before you say it, maybe dress before you dress, how you present yourself before you do that, so that the next black female coming up behind you, the road will be a little easier for her?
Definitely. And I feel like, honestly, a part of me always kind of knew I would be in some realm of the public eye. And so I kind of always, adjusted myself in that way anyway.
Okay.
But yes, you do have to think that way. I do have to be mindful of those things. But I don't think that it changes who you are as a person, right? Especially if who you are as a person is, I'm a professional anyway. So that's how I'm going to show up anyway. And I want the next person to understand that you have to be a professional. Now, what you do in your private life or personal life, that's your business, but understand that they will mesh together. And so you have to be mindful of that, even in personally, or when you show up with your children or your husband or whatever the case is. So yeah, I mean, you do have to be mindful of it. I don't think that it's something to get so bogged down with, though, to where you don't feel like you can't be authentically who you are in those spaces, though. And so that's my biggest thing, is still holding true to who you are in the midst of presenting and being whatever you have to be in that moment.
Let's talk about some legalese terms.
Sure.
So what is a plaintiff?
So a plaintiff is the person who brings forth a lawsuit. So that's the person who decides that they want to sue another person. They bring forth the lawsuit.
And what is a defendant?
The defendant is the person that's being sued by the plaintiff, right? And so that's the person who is having to respond to the lawsuit. Oh, well, you owe me $100. I'm the plaintiff. I'm bringing the lawsuit because you owe me $100. And the defendant is the person who is now being sued because the plaintiff says that you owe them $100. And how do you respond to that? And the court is a setting where you do so.
What is a citation?
So a citation is after the petition is kind of like the lawsuit that gets filed by the plaintiff. And then the citation is what happens from that petition, and it goes over to the constable. So it's the form, your legal notification of your trial date and what you're being sued for.
Okay. Now, is that something that's mailed out to the person, or is that like the hand-delivered paper?
The citation is delivered typically by the constable.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, that's right. Okay, so I know you guys deal with death, right? So how does that work?
So a lot of people think that JPs go out to pronounce people dead.
That's what I was thinking.
Right. But we don't get called unless they are dead. So that's the catch, right? They're already dead if you're calling me. And so what that means is that what we do is called inquest, and we go out to determine the cause and the manner of the death. So when someone dies, if it's unattended by a doctor, like, say there's not a doctor there present to oversee their passing, then we have to come out and decide and determine what we see based off the evidence of their medical history, what we see with our eyes, the evidence that's visibly there, how that person died, and the cause of their death. And so sometimes you can, look at something and say, well, this was a homicide. This person was shot. But you don't want to stop there. Say they were shot. You don't want to just say, oh, well, they were shot and that's how they died. You want to know exactly what the bullet was. You want to know a little bit more in depth. And so that's when we can order autopsies, which will give us more information, which goes through the forensic scientists, the medical examiners, to give us a little bit more information.
And you have to do all of that on the scene?
So the autopsy does not happen on the scene.
Right.
What we do on the scene is we go and then we assess the things that we do see, and if we're able to determine the cause of death, like sometimes people have a history of heart disease or something of that nature, and then you can clearly see from the indicators of what heart attacks look like, or what organ failure looks like, or what a diabetes induced something looks like, and you can determine, okay, well, this was the cause of their death. Right, and you can be very matter of fact about it. But if you cannot, then that's when you order an autopsy, and then at that point, the body gets transported to the morgue where the medical examiner does a deep dive into the body to figure out exactly what the cause was.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay. Now, whenever you became justice of the peace, I know you did your homework before, and you studied and you looked at other JPs. Once you are elected, do you go to like a training or some kind of certification to know exactly what to do and how to do?
Absolutely, and that's the beauty of the job, right? Is that you're required to do new judges school, which is like 20 hours. And so you'll go through, and it's rigorous, and you learn everything allegedly you're supposed to learn, right? Which you're only going to be able to scratch the surface a lot of times of some of the main things that you do. Okay. But then there's desk books, and there's all kind of resources that are online also. So like for me, I after I got elected, I was like, let me look at the desk books. So because the day I got sworn in, the very next day I had court. So it was...
You didn't have a chance to go to the training?
Not yet, no.
What?
Which happens very often because people get elected in November. Sometimes they take their office in January. A lot of times people take office in January, but new judges school may not start until, the next year. And we were in COVID. We were kind of in the thick of COVID then. So all our stuff was online. And so, I was already sitting on cases. So I already had to.
Wow.
You have to have some type of, you have to do a little bit of research. But you are required to do at least 20 hours of continuing education as a JP anyway. Mm-hmm. And then there's a bunch of resources. And I love in our downtime, I like to look at the webinars and just take in new information because every week there's something new that happens and something that you might have to do a little research on that's not the norm. And so, but you will get trained. So don't think that you got to come in and, unless you're like me and you have to go the next day. So you might want to do a little studying prior to. But.
Did you know about that? Did you know you were going to have a case the next day?
Yeah, I knew. I knew. I was like, oh, wow.
Exactly. Yeah. Talk about being thrown in the deep end.
Very quickly.
Yes.
Very quickly.
Very quickly. So whenever you are ruling on a case, do you rule with just the law, or do you rule with life and law, or what is your, strategy?
Yeah, so really, I think it depends. Number one, you want to make sure that, you have to go in with the law as your forefront, right? Because you don't want to circumvent anything that the law says. So you do have to go in at the forefront with that. But because we're JPs, and the whole point of judges in general, not just JPs, is discretion, right? And being able to use your common sense or your legal understanding or whatever to make the decisions in the gray areas, because there's gray areas in the law, which is kind of what lawyers do, right? They argue the gray points, and so you have to make decisions in those moments. And so you definitely have to come in with, that's why I pray for wisdom, because you do have to be able to decipher what's best when the law isn't clear, right? For me, evictions are really straightforward. You paid the rent or you didn't pay the rent, right? And there's no wiggle room on that, because that's just kind of how the law is written. But when you get into small claims and someone is saying, well, they said this, and this. Well, I didn't say that. Well, there's no evidence to the contrary. So who do you believe? Well, that's a gut thing, right? Yes. And you base it off of what you've observed from each person, each party in the case, and what they've said. And you pay attention, and there was a lie earlier that you told. And now I made note of that. Okay, now you're telling me this. Well, this sounds different than what you said before, and so you take all those things into consideration to make the best decision. Okay. So it's a mashup, and it kind of depends on what your case is, because sometimes it's very, this is the law, straightforward. But a lot of times it's way more than that, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Is justice truly blind, or is that just a saying?
I think that it should be. I think that it should be, and I think that all judges should strive for it to be that way. And I like to believe that I am, and I know other judges that are. But I also think we all can attest to times where we've heard things from cases, and you're like, they sound super partial or super biased or whatever, and as a layman, when I wasn't in the system, I was like, oh, what is this? This is crazy. And now that I understand more of the law, I understand, okay, well, where this once sounded biased, I understand the legal point and why they came to the decision that they made. And so a lot of things you have to take into context. So that's another part. But I think we have to actively work against our biases. And if you don't actively work against them, and I say this on our ethics calls all the time, it's so uncomfortable to say that you have a bias.
Yeah.
But
no one wants to admit that.
No one wants to admit it. But the truth of the matter is, in human nature, not even in human nature, just in animal nature as well, people gravitate towards groups, right? And so those things can become biases, whether we realize it or not. And so what you have to do is make that acknowledgement to yourself, and then check it and say, well, that doesn't belong here. Here we're looking at the facts of the case and the things that are being presented to us today. And so I feel like you have to walk into every single case with that in mind. And seriously, you have to think about that. And I think that a lot of times where it starts to feel like justice is not blind is because you're comfortable and you're just going with what feels comfortable, but comfortable is not always impartial. And so that's my opinion on the matter. I think you have to actively check your biases, always. Actively. You can't just think that, well, I'm not, I don't look at people like that. I don't see color. But you do. You do. And so now that you acknowledge that you see that these people are different, everything else surrounding what color they are should not matter. She's white. She's black. Okay. Drop all stereotypes that you ever had, and now hear the facts of the case and go forward. And so that's how it should be.
Is that asking too much? It sounds like it's asking a lot. And this is me as a black woman saying that. But it sounds like that's asking a lot to do. Because you're literally going against your own personal grain.
But people have entrusted you to do that. People have elected you to do that. So if it feels like a lot, then you shouldn't do it. Yeah. And that's how I feel about it. And so I'm really careful. Even like I go to conferences with, and I'm a minority all the time, and that's okay. But even when we have conversations, I'm checking conversations as well, right? Well, that's not the right terminology, And I know it seems offensive and, you could just, it's all good. Well, no, people don't know unless you let them know. And so they think it's okay. It's not okay, right? And so I try to be respectful of everyone's, their beliefs and all those things, but you have to check those things. People don't know unless you say something. People don't know unless you tell them. When you exist in your own sphere of understanding and people who look just like you, how would you know? Unless someone called you to it. And you can call them to it politely and nicely with a smile and all that, but you still let them know, actually, that's not accurate,
We are shooting this podcast in your courtroom. How does that make you feel when you hear that term, your courtroom?
Yeah, I don't feel like it's my courtroom per se. I know that it belongs to my office, but I really feel like it's the people's court, right? And so this is their place to come and get resolution. And so that's kind of more so how I feel. I kind of take myself out of it a lot of times because it's really not about me. right? It's not about me. This belongs to the people, and I think that that's the way that we have to think about it. This belongs to the people.
You were, and I'm sure I'll probably get the same answer, but you were elected in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
What was your first thought when you were declared the winner?
Mm-hmm.
Like, did you scream? Did you say, "Oh my God, I can't believe I did this"? Like, what was that?
Oh my gosh. I was like, well, it's real. Like, it's real. Like, you said you wanted this, and now he gave it to you.
Yeah.
Now what you gonna do? Right?
Yeah.
It was just like a surreal moment, because if I'm being honest, I remember God had told me I had the victory, but I was gonna have to fight like I've never fought before.
Okay.
And so that meant I was gonna be tested in ways I'd never been tested before. And so once we got through the battle and we walked around we got to blow the horn and the walls came crumbling down, it was like, yes, okay,
Yes.
well, here we are,
Look at
and so.
Look at you. Oh my goodness. Okay, so what are some things, and we spoke about this earlier in the podcast, what are some specific things that you have implemented since you've been elected?
So one of the main things that we've done, just from a court perspective, is that we've progressed our court to being a little bit more technologically savvy. And so we've been able to do some document projection. We've been able to process a lot more documents because of that, right?
Okay.
And so when we have our jury trials, when we have plaintiffs come, we do things called pretrial discovery, and so they're able to exchange documents without cross-contamination of things and examination of their documents. And then they have a full a full trial where they're fully aware of the process. Before, it was more so, here's your stuff, here's my stuff, judge, look at this, and that's really not the way things were supposed to go. So that's been one thing. Also, we're moving towards our e-filing system. Since we do so much civil, we're trying to move toward an electronic base for like our law firms and things of that nature.
Okay.
Also, we've added bilingual services. Also, I perform and officiate weddings in Spanish as well, just to kind of help with our...
Are you bilingual?
I'm not bilingual.
Oh, okay. How do you do that?
So I have a script that I follow,
Okay.
and then I do take Spanish lessons, but I'm not bilingual. So like I can do a little conversation, and then when it gets a little complex, I'm like, okay.
Okay.
But I do have staff that is bilingual, and so that helps us out tremendously, because that's how our community looks. Our community is very diverse in that way. And then also in the community, our build out in the community is we have our Precinct 1 Day of Service, which is a community-wide service project that we do where everyone's welcome, and we go and we do trash pickups. We serve at the food bank. We do Meals on Wheels, just to kind of bring that spirit of servitude to our community. We also have the Resilience Summit, which is a resource-driven summit where we're able to connect our community with the resources they need, whether that's mental health resources or workforce opportunities. It could be financial literacy. We've done this 3 years now. We also have the Judicial Academy internship and mentorship program, which is one of my favorites. And it's where students 10th through the 12th grade can apply, and they come and they do court observation once a month. And they'll sit in court with me. We'll go over cases. They'll tell me how they would rule. We'll go over the law that it pertains to. They get to do presentations. We have mock trials. We do different tours. And then on one Saturday a month, we have mentors come in. We have different attorneys, judges, law enforcement. We've had the sheriff come and speak to them for 2 hours. And they get to pick these people's brains and understand how they got to be where they are, what that looks like. Do you really want to go into this field? And I'm telling you, that is probably my favorite, because these students, some students who may have had legal interest before and have changed it or whatever the case may be, but are learning about tools that will help them build their resumes and help them get into colleges. I've had students switch their colleges because of mentors that have come. And so the academy, like my community projects are like the baby and the glue of this office for me, because that's the stuff that really does the biggest impact, right? And then even out of our office, we still try to do a lot of resource things back to our community. So we'll have rent relief people come here and help people so they can stay in their homes, and so that landlords can receive the money that they need. So just just being able to see that, yes, the office, and our website, we updated our website to have multilingual translations as well, and to make things a little bit more cohesive in the flow, make things more understandable, right? And those were just simple things, right, that we were able to come in and do. But we're just continuing in that vein and trying to make it more accessible and easy to understand. And even the whole process of court, like even the documentation of the document scan documentation is super big now, because I'm able to have people who can represent themselves properly in court. Whereas before, they didn't know what they were doing. And it was so much of babysitting, and now I'm like, okay, well, here's what you have, and here's your evidence. Lay your evidence out, and be aware that the jury is here, and and just educating the public. And so that's kind of my biggest thing, because I believe that an empowered electorate is like the best thing that we can have. Them understanding, the process. When you understand the process, it's less daunting. You show up to court, right? You get to have your day in court. You waited all this time. Have your day, have your say, and so let's do it the right way. So those are the things that we've done here, and so I'm very, very proud of those things.
What things do you think need to change within your field?
I think, honestly, going back to what I said previously about our electorate, if we could get our people, our community to understand what elected officials do, and then hold them accountable for those things. And I say understanding what they do because sometimes they want to hold us accountable for things that we have no control over. We don't have a finger, a pulse, or any sway in. But understanding that, okay, that's my city councilman. I want them to do X, Y, Z because they said that they were going to do X, Y, Z. And they didn't do it, nor did they update me on what's going on, so what are the next actions, right? That's where I feel like if we get there, even in my particular role, if we get there, you will see a more engaged elective, right? We will be way more engaged in our community, because I think that we owe that to our community, right? Yeah. I think we owe it to be engaged. I think we owe it to provide resources and information and to help people to the best that we can. And I think that there are some areas where we don't do that. There's a mystery, right, to the criminal justice system and the court system. And I understand all that, but I'm not here to continue that. I'm here to, here's how you navigate the court system. Here's the legal information you need so that you can be successful and that you never show up to my court again. If you got evicted 2 months ago, I don't want to see you in a few months, right? I want you to have learned something, right? So you don't come back here. And so that, to me, should be the ultimate goal. And I think it happens when the people say, this is what we expect of our elected officials, and this is what you get from us.
I'm in total agreement with that, but I feel like some elected officials, of course not you, don't want the educated voter. They don't want the educated elector, because then you will be held to the expectation, you will be held to that standard. And I don't know if they want that.
And that may be true. But I think that times are changing, and I think that our younger voters are going to turn the dial on that, right? My generation and younger, I think we'll turn the dial on that, but a part of our issue, a part of this generation's and younger generation's issue is, again, we don't understand the power that we have, and so we just kind of sit on it. And we're looking for something to get us emotionally charged to do something. Well, everything is not an emotional charge, right? Sometimes you have to go to the polls and you vote for people because they can do the job, right? And then sometimes you vote for them and you don't know, they look like the other person. I hear lesser of two evils, and that always sounds horrible, but sometimes it's really that simple though. Sometimes one person getting into the office may actually be a detriment to you. And this other person, you may not like them per se and their policies, but this person is going to do some like harm. So I think that us understanding that part of it, but I do agree some people don't want that, but I think it would be, it's like competition can be healthy sometimes, right? And I'm not saying that elected officials need to be competing. I'm just saying that checks and balances is important, though, right? That's how the whole government is set up. So checks and balances are important. So to me, that's a part of our checks.
You have referred to your courtroom numerous times during this interview as the People's Court. What does that mean?
So it's kind of just because this is like your first line of defense, right? Like I said, most people will not go up to higher courts. But here, people don't have to have an attorney. So you can represent yourself. So when we say it's the People's Court, it's because it belongs to you all. You all can come in here without attorneys, and you get to represent yourself, and, you get to have your day. And we are like that court that's like the first line to the community, right?
Okay.
The one that most people, between JP court and municipal court, this is the court that most of the community comes through.
Okay.
They're not coming through, county court at law, right? They're coming here because it's small infractions that happen here. It's lawsuits. It's, small lawsuits. So that's why we say the People's Court, because it belongs to them, because they can practice in this court, And when you look at the judges and the qualifications to be a JP, this is regular people. Regular people.
Why do you think it's important to have a black female such as yourself as a JP? Why should that be important in the community?
I think it should be important because of what it means. I feel like it means that if we never had this before, which, this is something new, right? And we'll get past the point where this is something first, right? I'm one, but there will be many, many more after me. And so I think what it means to get here is you can do it, right? You can do it. You can do it, and people look at me and they're like, oh, she's so young. You can do it. You're 20-something in college. You want to be an elected official? You can do it. You can absolutely do it. And what's stopping you? Get your education. Get involved in the community, whatever that looks like. And then make those establishments, make those relationships, and you can do it, And there shouldn't be anything stopping you. Like, I should just be something like, okay, well, that means that I can. That's all it should mean. It means that I can.
Have you thought about that there are babies that have been born and most likely will be born that only know a black female justice of the peace in Jefferson County? Have you thought about that and what that means?
No, I never thought about that. I never thought about that. And I think if that is the case, then it will be the first of many things to come. That's what I think. And I'm excited I'm excited for these generations coming after us, because I think that there are other elected officials, other community people who see the promise in our younger generation and are trying to pour back into them so that they can come and fulfill these seats. Like, I won't be here forever. No other elected official will be in that spot forever. So there is an opportunity for you. And you are our future, so what does it look like when you get here? See what I'm doing and think about how you do it better.
As we get ready to wrap up this interview, what would you say is your personal intention with being a JP?
For me, I would say it's about showing how God uses regular people to be put in places to give back to their community. I think that I came into office in maybe a non-traditional way, if you will. I didn't really go through, I don't know what the social rigmarole is or whatever to get here. It was more so I got here through work. Right, through my work and my hard work for our community, and for my love of people, and just what God put inside of me. And so I think, if anything, it should just be a testament to how God uses regular people, and He can elevate you when you decide to get over your fear. I think to me, that's the whole point and the purpose. And so that's why for whenever I speak anywhere, I always have to go back to that, because he's the whole reason I'm here. Like, there's nothing great about me. It's just that he chose me, and I was like, okay, well, I'll submit to what you say. And I'm scared, but I'm going to submit. And I don't think I'm supposed to do this, but you say I'm supposed to do it, and I'm going to do it. And so I submit to that, and I will work hard, and I will do the things that you say.
Has God revealed to you why he did choose you for this position?
He hasn't told me specifically why it's me. I just know that way back when I was 16 and pregnant with my daughter, and I wondered why. Everybody else doing everything else.
Yeah.
Why me? And he just said, I will use your story for my glory. And that was it. And it wasn't necessarily what I wanted to hear, but there was some comfort in there, which meant whatever happened in my life, that it was for a greater purpose. And so that's all I can say. I feel like that's the answer, and I don't know why he chose me as a vessel for this, but I'm grateful to it. And it is, sometimes it's heavy, but you know that he's equipped you with it, and he's prepared you for it. And so, I'm just grateful to be chosen is all I can say.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for saying yes to doing this podcast, and for the education and the knowledge that you have imparted to me and my viewers. You have been amazing.
Well, I hope you guys did learn a little bit about the JP office. It's a great office, and I would encourage others to look into it. It's a great vessel to give back to our community, and to really, if you're interested in law or serving, this is a great, great, great office. So,
now, my final question for you, Judge Doyle. Who do you think would make a great guest on the podcast, but you have to help me get them on?
I think that our municipal judge, Brittany Holmes, would be a great add. She is a Black female judge here in Jefferson County. We went to high school together, and she's super smart, and she's also a practicing attorney here, and she also worked in the DA's office here. So she has the heart of a servant, and she's been in our community, and I think that she would be a great person to interview. I think she has a wealth of knowledge.
What high school did y'all go to putting out all these judges?
Ozan High School.
Oh!
Ozan High School.
Wow.
It's no more, but it really did breed a lot of excellence. So.
Yes, it did. Oh, my goodness. Okay. Well, congratulations to you on being the absolute first African-American female JP.
Thank you. I appreciate you. And thank you so much for taking your time and even considering to interview me today. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for watching. You can get this podcast and all of my other podcasts on YouTube Podcasts and Apple Podcasts. And remember, you always have time to listen and learn on the go.
Come on, let's go on a journey. Sit back, buckle up, enjoy the ride.